All right, well, the ANC National Dispute Resolution Committee is this afternoon meeting over disputes in the regional conference in Ekurhuleni. Yesterday, the meeting between the ANC leadership in Gauteng and the ANC Ekurhuleni regional leaders called to decide on the outcome of the ANC Ekurhuleni Regional Conference has deadlocked. The meeting follows final results of the 19 quarantine votes verified by the ANC National Dispute Resolution Committee yesterday. The results of the 19 quarantine votes affect the positions of regional chairperson, the deputy chair and deputy secretary. The provincial leaders raised the issue of more branches having the same problem as opposed to just the 6 branches whose votes were quarantined. Let's get more on this then. We're of course joined by Samkele Maseko, our senior SABC News reporter, to unpack these latest developments. A very good afternoon to you, Sam. Let's talk then. Yesterday you were talking about these delays. Is the ANC any closer to finalizing the Ekurhuleni quarantine votes?
As we speak at this point in time, it doesn't look like the African National Congress is any closer to finalizing the issue of Ekurhuleni and the quarantined 19 votes. We do know that the Provincial Secretary, Jacob Kawe, along with all other provincial office bearers, including David Makula, the chairperson, and Parkstal, the treasurer, and Banyazelo Sufi, the deputy chairperson, and Nomanto Ramaluka, the deputy provincial secretary, they were engaged in a meeting with the ANC's National Executive Committee team led by Jeff Khadebe, dealing with this particular matter where they deadlocked, where Jacob Kawe raised issues of the Ekurhuleni branches not following the proper guidelines which were distributed by the province in preparation for this regional conference that took place over the past weekend. And thus, those results were temporarily announced with only 2 officials that were elected not being affected by those quarantine votes. There has come to light that the Ekurhuleni region did not use the ANC's new digital scanner system to effect and used the manual system, which is the outdated system of the African National Congress. We do know that the guidelines of the ANC say that 80% of those attending branch meetings have to use the scanner method and the QR codes, which is the new ANC membership system. But in Ekurhuleni, over 60% of the branches were using the manual system, which thus affected and is affecting the outcomes of these discussions taking place between the POBs and the ANC team led by Jeff Khadebe and Derek Honeycomb.
Are you able at this point to talk to us then about, these particular party members? We believe there's 5 from the 5 branches that sent a legal letter to the party threatening legal action. And I wonder, are we then getting to a point where we were before, where, ANC takes ANC to courts? Are we slowly but surely getting to that point again?
In essence, Flo, what has transpired now is that the ANC has not declared the results of Ekurhuleni, so we can't effectively say there is a regional executive committee that's been elected thus far in Ekurhuleni, because even additional members that were voted for those 19 votes are still quarantined there as well. So it essentially tells you that those 5 branches that are supporting Dr. Karaza have sent a legal letter threatening the African National Congress that if they don't get a fruitful response by tomorrow afternoon, then they have instructed their lawyers to seek legal recourse within this particular matter, which will open up a can of worms in the ANC membership system. For instance, they are alluding that it's not only their 5 branches that went over the 10% mark of their manual system and rather didn't use the scanner system, the digital system of the African National Congress, including branches that Samkele Maseko belongs to, branches that TK that belongs to, branches that Jongeziwe Ekurhuleni, the deputy chairperson, whose temporary results are out, is affected as well, and Silos Koko, the regional treasurer, and Maiponi Mshongo, the regional deputy secretary. So in essence, they are saying that more ANC leaders' branches were affected by this issue of the use of the manual system more instead of the digital system, and they are saying that if they don't get a fruitful outcome, then they will pursue this particular matter in court, which will thus go back to that 2017 perspective of the ANC going towards that national conference, where many of those who were supporting ANC Deputy President then Cyril Ramaphosa had taken most of their regional and provincial conferences to court, which were thus later on nullified by the court. Yeah. So you could have the same scenario playing itself out here in Gauteng as well, where those supporting Dr. Karaza have approached essentially threatening the ANC in approaching the courts if they don't get a fruitful outcome by tomorrow afternoon. What we do know is that if the meeting deadlocks this afternoon, which starts at 4 o'clock between the POBs of Gauteng and the national team led by Jeff Radebe and David Kanekom, they will then move the matter to next week, Monday's National Working Committee of the African National Congress.
Yeah, funny enough, we're hearing from Jeff Radebe. We haven't heard his name in quite a while. Let's talk about, what are the key points that have led to the Gauteng office bearers deadlocking with the national team led by Jeff Radebe in dealing with this particular matter?
In essence, the Gauteng provincial officials are saying that it's not only these 5 branches that were contaminated and had issues of the nano system being used more than the scanner and the QR code. They are essentially saying that let's open up the system and see how the Ekurhuleni branches went to the regional conference. They are saying that the regional secretary, TK Niza, had drawn up his own particular guidelines that did not follow the general standard provincial guidelines that are being used by the ANC in preparation of all the regional and provincial conferences, saying that Ekurhuleni was a unique case where they had came up with their own unique guidelines that first meant that branches supporting Dr. Kagaza were not being favored by the incumbent leadership of Ekurhuleni because they were not supporting TK Niza and Samkele Maseko, and those supporting Dr. Kagaza are essentially saying that they were being sidelined. You also remember there are provincial dynamics to this particular matter as well. You've got Jacob Kawe, the incumbent provincial secretary of the ANC, who wants to come back as the PS. He is seemingly being nominated by those who support Dr. Kagaza in Ekurhuleni, as opposed to when he was initially elected as the provincial secretary, when he was still aligned with the likes of Lebogang Maile and Mzwandile Masina and TK Niza. How politics has changed now that he has he's fallen aside and no longer is supported by the likes of Mzwandile Masina and is rather supported by the likes of Panyaza Lesufi, whom are supported by Dr. Kagaza. So it's essentially a battle of whom is closer to whom when it comes to the ANC's internal provincial dynamics. It's no secret that the likes of Mzwandile Masina has been a phone to the ANC provincial chairperson, David Makura, and premier of the province, and he may have favored the likes of Dr. Kagaza to take over, which is seemingly what Mzwandile Maseko is saying, in that the provincial office bearers of Gauteng are not aligned to them, and they would do anything to reverse the election of the Ekurhuleni Regional Executive last week over the weekend at Indaba Hotel. So it's a tit for tat within the ANC provincial leaders, which then places the ANC's National Executive Committee and national leaders to come in and step in and resolve this particular matter, as the two warring factions between Adiwele and Banyapanya, which is supporting Panyaza Lesufi, Adiwele supporting Lebogang Maile, are at each other's throats within the province.
All right, Samkele, let's leave it there. Thanks very much there to Samkele Maseko giving us the latest then with regards to the outcomes of the ANC Ekurhuleni Regional Conference, which of course has deadlocked at this time. Our senior reporter there, Samkele Maseko, reporting for us.